ياسمين مش عارف، هي اكيد معاهم في المالتي ميديا بتاعت بتاع الليكتشر روم. حنان دخلت لقيتها لسه شغاله، اعمل ايه؟ هي طلعت، انا قلت لها خلاص خلصتي، مش عارف قفلت بقى ولا ايه؟ هدخل انا بقى صح؟ الولاد دول كده جايين لنا. ماشي يا مستر، الله يكرمك. مورنينج شباب. مورنينج مورنينج. Guys, can you hear me? Hello? شباب صباح الفل. Good morning. Sama Darwish, good morning. Guys, can you hear me? Hello? شباب. Okay. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Over the past 2 minutes, you didn't hear me?
No.
Okay. So, we have 12 guys so far. I have Usama Darwish. Usama, can you hear me?
Yes, Master.
Ryan?
Yes, sir.
Morning, Ryan. Yasin, Saeed, Yusuf Awad. Yusuf, Yasin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What about Bughdadi, Janna Gouda, Hassan Gouda, Hassan Ruhaim? Bughdadi, can you hear me? Bughdadi? Bughdadi. Janna Gouda, Hassan Ruhaim, Janna Garaihi, Tadrus, and Yusuf Sihrawi. You don't have mics, guys, or what? What's your problem? Again, Sihrawi, Tadrus, Janna Garaihi, Jana, sorry, Hassan Ruhaim, Hassan Gouda, Janna Gouda, Abdurrahman Bughdadi. You have problems with your mics or what? Can you write and tell me in the chat, please? Okay. As you know, we have 2 sessions, a session before the break and a session after. The last time we did the novel was this part. Try to find it in your mobiles, please. This is page 44, I think. Find this title, The Other Side of Sandpaper. The Other Side of Sandpaper. In the first session, we're going to do part of the novel. And in the second session, we're going to do vocabulary related to part 1. You know, the novel is a prologue, an introduction, and 10 parts. It's not divided into chapters. The chapters here are called parts. So this is part 1. We are about to finish part 1. And those who study online, please read part 1. And I put or posted 2 sheets on grade 11 SMS. Try to find them, print them. And if you have any question, ask me. On the other side of sandpaper, people have defining moments. I suppose especially when they're children. For some people, it's a Jesse Owens incident. Let me remind you of the Jesse Owens incident, or who can remind us of that Jesse Owens incident? Guys, who can put your hand up, please? Who can tell us about the Jesse Owens incident? Put your hands up, please. Yusuf Hawad, Yasin, Ryan, Usama. Who can tell us? I have Yusuf, Yasin. Okay, Yasin, go ahead.
Hello, Rudy got some charcoal from the kitchen and he painted himself black. He smeared himself black.
Yes.
And then he what? Then he took his brother's bike.
Good.
And he went to a tracking field, a running field.
Okay.
And he imagined that he was having a race with the imaginary contestants with himself, and
Okay.
and when he reached the end of the race, he found his father waiting for him.
Okay.
And then his father took him home.
Okay. Thank you very much again. Thank you, Yasin. I'll write your name down. Yasin. Okay. Did a good job. Yasin Said. Okay. Jesse Owens, guys, for those who don't know, was an American athlete who won 4 golden medals in the Berlin Olympics in 1936. He was Black American. Rudi Steiner, this little German child, was obsessed with Jesse Owens. He wanted to be like him. You know, at the time of Hitler, the Aryan race, the German Aryan race, you shouldn't admire a black person. You are superior to all the other people of the world. You are an Aryan, okay? But the boy was blamed by his father by this. The boy painted or smeared all his body black with charcoal and went to a track, a running track, and imagined that he was having a race with others, as Yasin said, and he was the winner, of course, because he was Jesse Owens. His father, this was at night, his father looked for him and found him in this place and took him home, okay, and blamed him for this. This is the Jesse Owens incident. So, for others, it's a moment of bedwetting hysteria. Another child, this is a child was racing imaginary people and imagining himself a champion. Okay, another child, we talk about Liesel here, she was wetting her bed at that time. You know, Liesel Memminger was in the habit of having nightmares and wetting herself in bed. It was late May 1939, 4 months before the beginning of World War II, and the night had been like most others. Mama, here, Rosa Huberman, shook her iron fist. Papa was out. Liesel cleaned the front door and watched the Himmel Street sky. For those who don't attend, Liesel cleaned the front door because a lady called Alsapfel used to spit on the door because she had some disagreements or some conflicts, disputes with Rosa a long time ago. Earlier, there had been a parade. The brown-shirted extremist members of the NSDAP, the Nazi party or the Nazi party, okay, had marched down Munich Street. Their banners worn proudly, their faces held high like soldiers, as if on sticks. Their voices were full of song, culminating in a roaring rendition of Deutschland über alles. Deutschland über alles means Germany over everything. Germany over everything. As always, they were clapped. The people who were watching clapped for them. They were spurred on as they walked to who knows where. People on the streets stood and watched. some with straight-armed salutes like Hitler. They raise their arms in front of them this way and salute them. Others with hands that burn from applause. People were clapping warmly. Some kept faces that were controlled by pride and rally, like Frau Diller. She was very proud of them. Frau Diller, guys, was a shopkeeper. She had a corner shop in which she sold rare products, goods to those who were loyal to Hitler only. To be served when you enter this shop, you have to hail Hitler or greet Hitler first. And then there were the scatterings of odd men out, like Alex Steiner, Rudy's father, who stood like a human-shaped block of wood. He didn't show any reaction, clapping slow and beautiful submission. On the footpath, Liesel stood with her papa and Rudy. Hans Huberman wore a face with the shades pulled down. He didn't like the Nazis. He wasn't one of their fans. Some crunched numbers, some numbers to remember. In 1933, when Hitler came to power, 90% of Germans showed unflinching support for Adolf Hitler. They supported him wholeheartedly. What about the other 10%? They didn't. Hans Huberman belonged to the 10%. So Hans didn't choose or didn't vote for Hitler. There was a reason for that. We are going to know later. In the night, Liesel dreamed like she always did. She always dreamed. At first, she saw the brown shirts marching, the soldiers, but soon enough, they led her to a train. Remember, she was always dreaming about the train on which her brother died. And the usual discovery awaited. Her brother was staring again, staring at the floor of the train. This was her nightmare. When she woke up screaming, Liesel knew immediately that on this occasion, something had changed. A smell leaked out from under the sheets. She wetted herself, warm and sickly. At first, she tried convincing herself that nothing had happened, but as Papa came closer and held her, she cried and admitted the fact in his ear. She whispered it to him. Dad, I have whispered, I have wetted myself. Papa, Papa, and that was all. He could probably smell it. He lifted her gently from the bed and carried her into the washroom. The moment came a few minutes later. We take the sheets off, Papa said. And when he reached under and pulled at the fabric, something loosened and landed with a thud. Because Liesel was hiding something under her mattress. What fell on the ground? A black book with silver writing. Remember this black book with silver writing? On it came hurtling out and landed on the floor between the tall man's legs, or feet, between Hans's legs. He looked down at it. He looked at the girl, who timidly shrugged, as if she was saying, I don't know whose this book is. It doesn't belong to me. Then he read the title with concentration aloud. He read it aloud. At that moment, the girl couldn't read or write. Remember, what is the title of the first book Liesel stole, guys? This is the title, The Grave Digger's Handbook. Again, this is the title of the first book Liesel stole, the book thief. The book is entitled The Grave Digger's Handbook. Capital G, capital D, capital H, as you know. So that's what it's called, Liesel said, or thought to herself. This is the title of the book I have stolen. A patch of silence, a period of silence stood among them now. The man, the girl, the book. He picked it up and spoke soft as cotton to the girl. It was 2 a.m. Conversation. He said to her, is this yours? Yes, Papa. Do you want to read it? Again, yes, Papa. A tired smile metallic eyes, melting, well, with better reading than. So he agreed to read the book with her, although it was a grave digger's handbook. 4 years later, when she came to write in the basement, when she learned how to read and write, two thoughts struck Liesel about the trauma of wetting the bed. Two bad memories. First, she felt extremely lucky that it was Papa who discovered the book. Fortunately, when the sheets had been washed previously, Rosa had made Liesel strip the bed and make it up herself, so nobody discovered the book. If Rosa was the one who discovered the book, it would be a problem for Liesel. And be quick about it, Zaumensch, she said. Does it look like we've got all day? This is the first occasion. And when Liesel made the bed herself, nobody discovered about the book or found out about the book. And the second time, when she wetted her bed, the person who went to change the sheets was Hans, not Rosa, luckily, fortunately. Second, the second thing, she was clearly proud of Hans Huberman's part in her education. Although he left school when he was in grade 4, he wasn't a good reader. You wouldn't think it, she wrote, but it was not so much the school who helped me to read. It wasn't the school role only. Hans helped me also. It was Papa. People think he's not so smart, and it's true that he doesn't read too fast, but I would soon learn that words and writing actually saved his life once when he was in the army in World War I. Or at least words and the man here is Max's father, Max Vandenberg's father, who taught him the accordion. You know, Max, this accordion belonged to Max's father, and he gave it to, or Hans took it after Max's father died. First things first, Hans Huberman said that night he washed the sheets. Let's wash the sheets first because they are dirty. We don't want Rosa to discover or find out about them. And hung them up to dry. Now, let's get this midnight class started. The yellow light was alive with dust. Liesel sat on cold, clean sheets, ashamed, but at the same time happy, elated. The thought of bed wetting prodded her, but she was going to read, okay? She was going to read the book. Again, this is what's meant by the title. If you go back to the title, the other side of the sandpaper. You know, sandpaper is the rough face, a type of paper which we use to make wood or any surface smooth, sandpaper. The other side of the sandpaper is smooth. Here, it's a metaphor for the nightmares Liesel had. It was hard, it was harsh, it was rough, but it has another positive side. She, because of these nightmares and because of this bedwetting incident, she learned how to read and write. It was a good thing at the same time. The excitement stood up. The excitement stood up. In her, visions of a 10-year-old reading genius were set alight. If only it was that easy. To tell you the truth, Papa explained up front. He was very, let's say, honest with the girl. I'm not such a good reader myself. He told her, I'm not such a good reader. But it didn't matter that he read slowly. If anything, it might have helped that his own reading pace was slower than average. And maybe this was something useful for a girl who couldn't read or write at this moment. You need a person who reads and teaches you step by step slowly. Perhaps it would cause less frustration in coping with the girl's lack of ability, and this was more suitable for the girl to learn. Still, initially, Hans appeared a little uncomfortable, holding the book and looking through it. When he came over and sat next to her on the bed, he leaned back, his legs angling over the side. He examined the book looked at the book again and dropped it on the blanket. Now, why would a nice girl like you want to read such a thing? The Grave Digger's Handbook. Again, Liesel shrugged. She doesn't know, but she was obsessed with books. Had the apprentice, the little girl, or the boy who lost the book, you remember, this book was dropped by the apprentice grave digger, the 14-year-old boy, when they were burying Werner, Liesel's brother. Had the apprentice been reading the complete works of Goethe or any other such luminary, guys, a luminary is a person who is an expert in any field. A luminary, a person who is highly educated, a cultivated person, okay, that was what would have sat in front of them. She attempted to explain, when it was sitting in the snow, she found the book on the snow and she picked it up. And the soft-spoken words fell off the side of the bed, emptying to the floor like powder. Papa knew what to say, though. He always knew what to say. He ran a hand through his sleepy hair and said, he scratched his head and said, well, promise me one thing, Liesel. If I die, this is Hans. If I die anytime soon, you make sure they bury me right, according to the tips in this book. Because again, remember, the title of the book is The Grave Digger's Handbook. So he asked her to do this. If I die anytime soon, you make sure they bury me according to this book, or according to the advice in this book. She nodded, she agreed with great sincerity. No skipping chapter 6 or step 4 in chapter 9. He laughed. He asked her not to skip the information or the tips in chapter 6 or step 4 in chapter 9. He laughed, as did the bedwetter. The bedwetter is the girl, as you know. Well, I'm glad that's settled. We can get on with it now. Okay, agreed? Agreed. Will you bury me appropriately according to this book? Yes, yes. He adjusted his position and his bones creaked like itchy floorboards. You know, the floorboards are the wooden panes used to cover the floors. The fun begins. Amplified by the still of night, was silent. The book opened. A gust of wind. A gust means a flash of wind or a torrent of wind. Looking back, Liesel could tell exactly what her papa was thinking when he scanned the first page of the Grave Digger's Handbook. Again and again, this is the title of the first book the girls taught. As he realized the difficulty of the text. Again, Hans left school when he was in grade 4, but he found it difficult to read. He was clearly aware that such a book was hardly ideal. It was a high level for him. There were words in there that he'd have trouble with himself, or he'd have trouble with himself. There were some words he could hardly read, not to mention the morbidity of the subject, the boredom of the subject. Morbidity means death or something like that, the boredom. It was boring. You read about how to bury someone. As for the girl, there was a sudden desire to read it that she didn't even attempt to understand. On some level, perhaps she wanted to make sure her brother was buried right. Maybe, whatever the reason, her hunger to read the book was as intense as any 10-year-old human could experience. Chapter 1 was called The First Step, Choosing the Right Equipment. The title of chapter 1 of the Grave Digger's Handbook was titled, chapter 1 was titled The First Step, Choosing the Right Equipment to dig a grave, to bury someone. In a short introductory passage, it outlined, it summarized the Kind of material to be covered in the following 20 pages. Types of shovels, you know, we use when we go to the beach, we use shovels, picks, gloves, and so forth were itemized, these items, as well as the vital need to properly maintain them. This grave digging was serious. As Papa he flicked through the book, it could surely feel Liesel's eyes on him. He felt that Liesel's eyes were fixed on him. They reached over and gripped him, her eyes, waiting for something, anything, to slip from his lips. Here, he lifted again and handed her the book. Okay, look at this page and tell me how many words you can read. She looked at it and lied, about half. He was examining her, he was testing her. How many words of this page can you read? About half. He asked her to read some, but of course she couldn't. When he made her point out any words she could read and actually say them, there were only 3. She could read only 3 words on the page. She said half of the page. The 3 main German words for the, you know them, die, das, and der, the 3 main German words for that. Because you know that in German is about 20 words. The whole page must have had 200 words on it. So she could read 3 words out of 200. This might be harder than I thought. She caught him thinking it just for a moment. He lifted himself forward, rose to his feet, he stood up and walked out. This time, when he came back, he said, actually, I have a better idea. In his hand, there was a thick painter's pencil and a stack of sandpaper. Remember the sandpaper? Let's start from scratch. Let's start from the very beginning, from square one. Liesel saw no reason to argue because she was a very bad reader. She could read 3 words only out of 200, and she hardly could read anything. In the left corner of an upturned piece of sandpaper, he drew a square of perhaps an inch and shoved a capital A inside. So he started from the very beginning to teach her A, B, C. In the other corner, he placed a lowercase 1, capital A and small a. So far, so good. A, Liesel said. A for what? She smiled. Apple. For apple. A, apple. A, apple. A, apple. Okay? She wrote the word in big letters and drew a misshapen apple. Under it, he was a house painter, not an artist. When it was complete, he looked over and said, now for B. So he started from the very beginning, from A, B, C. He wrote the letter A, capital and small, and drew an apple, or an apple in German, and then moved to B. As they progressed through the alphabet, Liesel's eyes grew larger. She had done this at school, in the kindergarten class. But this time was better. She was the only one there. Nobody to laugh at her, no one to castigate her. And she was not gigantic. She was small, as you know. It was nice to watch Papa's hand as he wrote the words and slowly constructed the primitive sketches. Come on, Liesel, he said, and she struggled later on to write the letters. Something that starts with S. Now they reach the letter S. Now this is letter number 20. The girl is progressing very fast. It's easy. I'm very disappointed in you. You hear it all the time. A word beginning with the letter S. Can you guess it, guys? Zaumensch, of course. She couldn't think. Come on. His whisper played with her. Think of Mama. That was when the word struck her face like a slap. a reflex grin. She smiled. Zaumensch, she said, Zaumensch. Remember, this is the word her mama used to use when she called her. Zaumensch in English means pig or swine. She shouted, and Papa roared with laughter, then quieted. We have to be quiet because Rosa was sleeping. It was at midnight, remember. But he roared all the same and wrote the word, completing it with one of his sketches, a typical Hans Huberman art work. Who is this? Can you guess, guys, who is this? Papa, she whispered, I have no eyes. He patted the girl's hair. She'd fallen into his trap with a smile like that. I want to say maybe this is Rosa. He said or wrote the word Zaumensch, and every time he wrote a word to represent a letter, next to the word he drew a picture. But this is what's meant by Zaumensch. Maybe because Liesel herself was called Zaumensch by Rosa. This is maybe Liesel, or maybe this is Rosa herself, the person who uses the word. He hugged her and then looked again at the picture with a face of warm silver. Now for 7. So he works on the numbers and the letters at the same time. With the alphabet completed and studied a dozen times, Papa leaned over and said, enough for tonight. So he taught her the alphabet from A to Z. I think this is Z, not 7. Now for Z or Z in German. So they have finished the letters. He was definite enough. When you wake up, I'll play accordion for you. Thanks, Papa. Good night. A quiet one-syllable laugh. Good night, Zaumensch, he said. Good night, Papa. He switched off the light, came back, and sat in the chair in the darkness. Liesel kept her eyes open. She was watching the words. The words, her first word, the words she had just learned. Okay. Guys, were you following up? Ryan? Ryan, are you there?
Yes, miss. Yeah, I'm here.
Well, did you read part 1? Or this is
I'm halfway through it.
Okay. Try to finish part 1, please. People who study online, please read part 1. Part 1 is almost up to page 57. I'm not sure. Read to the end of part 1. Okay, I'll end this session now and see you after the break. We're going to do vocabulary related to part 1 and some questions. Vocabulary and some questions about part 1. We still haven't finished it, but we are about to do. Okay, in the second session, inshallah, after the break, we will do some vocab and some questions about the part we have studied. Okay, see you after the break, inshallah. 10:35. See you.